The appeal of animation in B2B website design is undeniable. We all like seeing, moving, interesting websites when we're browsing the web. The problem with animation is it's really counterproductive to the buyer experience when they're trying to make a decision to purchase on our websites. So, you will see as you go around the web, a lot of the websites you visit are highly animated. There'll be moving UIs, there'll be animated infographics, there'll be, flowing elements and so on. And they're there because there's an innate desire amongst marketers and brands and businesses to look their best, to stand out, and to some degree to continually push the boundaries of what's possible, and a little bit of one-upmanship there that lead us to, enrich our websites and add to them in ways even when they're counterproductive to the result we're trying to achieve. Why is it counterproductive? Well, studies have shown, and a wide range of studies in a wide range of fields have proven that, motion is a very effective way to attract attention. Goes right back to, the early evolution of the human brain. When something moves, it grabs our attention. It grabs the attention of our eyes, we look at it, and it grabs the attention of our brain, we focus on it. And the problem with that is it's an overwhelming response, meaning that when something moves on your website, it completely takes away the attention from anything that's written on your website. And in the vast majority of cases, what's moving will not contain as much value, as much information for the buyer who's trying to make a decision as what's written. We need buyers to consume the message, the value proposition, the benefits, the features, the differentiation, the trust signals that are there. But if we're putting, next to those very important messages, moving graphics, animated graphics, video even, then the brain of the visitor is constantly having to fight between what's moving and what they're trying to read. And so, in nearly all cases, having something moving, having something animated on your website is going to negatively impact the degree to which the buyer focuses on what you want them to, the degree to which the buyer understands what it is you're offering, and fundamentally, the overall conversion rate of visitors into high intent inquiries on that website, because they won't have the same degree of understanding of what's offered. It takes a lot of courage to create a simple website in B2B, because there are so many examples of websites that are pushing it further and further all the time. But in truth, what a buyer needs from your website when they're trying to make an important, potentially costly purchase decision is, in some ways, the opposite of what we're tempted to do as marketers most of the time. That applies to the language we use as well, but it also applies to the imagery and the movement. So sliders in your hero section are a very bad idea, because the movement of those will completely override the brain and take away any attention from the core message that you have. Fast moving animations of your user interface with cursors whizzing around and screens opening and closing, again, might feel like a good way to show people what you have to offer, but it's too much, and the brain will focus so much on what's moving, they won't even see what the screenshot potentially is trying to show them, and so on and so forth. In truth, the best results will come from static images, static screenshots, static illustrations, and you can use animation subtly in a website to enhance the user experience. It's a very good idea to make your website feel responsive to user movement by using hover states and subtle CSS animations on elements, to make it obvious that buttons are clickable, for example, and to create a feeling of, an interactive site that's alive and breathing a little bit, but pushing a ton of animation into your illustrations, in putting automatically playing videos in places where you really want people to be reading. All of these things are going to lessen the amount of information that's consumed and lessen the conversion rate overall. We recently looked for examples of the best B2B SaaS websites in particular, and we found some really great examples that applied a lot of our best practices for demand capture, clear messaging around value propositions, direct and specific calls to action and so on. But it was interesting that we found quite heavy animation and movement in a lot of them, a lot of scroll jacking, a lot of animated infographics and UIs. And in the majority of cases, they will be detrimental to the overall results. There were only a few that dared to go as far as having a static website where their screenshots were presented clearly, but still where infographics and illustrations were not animated. And, I wager that those are the ones that will see the best results from their websites, because, it's one of the components of an effective buyer experience that goes so against our inclinations, our temptations as marketers, that it's really hard to do. It's really hard to be a marketer and say to other stakeholders, our website's going to be entirely static, but it is the way to generate the best results, to get the best performance. And, given that the result we're after is pipeline, there really should be no argument against it. But that's the world we live in, where there's lots of pressures placed upon people building websites from different stakeholders, even from themselves sometimes. Now, if you stop and look at data, then you can build a business case for all of these things, either by testing or by looking at your historic performance, or by really scrutinizing the advice and studies that are out there. Also referring to UX authorities, to get information about what works best in B2B website design. The information's all out there, but it isn't necessarily the first thing that we reach for when thinking about how we'll design our new homepage, for example.